Hello and welcome to another edition of Sports Business. We're here in Centre Court, Swiss Indoor Tennis Tournament in Basel, and I'm joined today by Daniel Chambon, who is the Vice President and also the Deputy Tournament Director. Daniel, hello.
Good day, how are you?
Good day, thank you. Yes. The history of tennis, you've been in the game for, well, a lot of years now. Just tell me briefly, how has the organizational side come on in the last 20 years?
Well, it has become a lot more professional. There's a lot more money involved into the game. The television has taken over the financing of the tournament in most of the tournament on the ATP Tour. We have got almost 60 tournaments on the ATP Tour, and most of them are packaged through ATP Media now.
You were a senior executive in TV 20 years ago. How were the financing drawn up then?
It was totally different. I mean, in those days you could walk around and just purchase the right to a tennis tournament. This is what I did when I started packaging tennis for Eurosport in the early 90s, and making a deal with the ATP was fairly easy in those days. But I think football essentially has changed a lot of things in sport, and essentially in the money you have to put forward to acquire tennis events these days, which is to the benefit of the players because their revenues have increased amazingly.
So let's jump forward. So today you are clearly heavily involved in the Basel tournament. Give me a few figures there.
Well, you know, in the 90s, the prize money for the tournament was around $500,000. Today it's 2.5 million euros. And the players are demanding an increase of 6% per year. So it's very substantial. The television rights in the last 10 years have increased 1 to 10. Today, we generate in viewership around the world around 1 billion people, and something like 4.5 million people are going to the stadium watching tennis. So the tennis is in a very good state, both in terms of appeal to the public and also commercially.
So for the Basel tournament, how does it actually work out? Clearly, for me, the most important thing is to tie down the players. Is that something that is easy, difficult, expensive? How does that work?
Well, it is difficult, expensive, and there are not that many players in Basel that appeal to the public here because they have been fed by this tournament for the last 50 years by the best. Like Roger Federer, who is president of the tournament, has made sure every year the #1 player of the world was playing in Basel, and he has done this year in, year out. So today, like people, they want to see Federer, of course. They want to see Del Potro. They want to see Nadal, Djokovic, and the young generation, the Zverev, Tsitsipas, Shapovalov, etc. And we are trying every year to bring a combination of both young players coming up, the new gen, and the stars of the game.
So let's go to a specific case, Roger Federer. I believe you had a little bit to do with him coming here now. Statistically, he's won the tournament 8 times, born and bred in Basel, used to be a ball boy. So in theory, he should just turn up. But I guess it's not as simple as that.
And his mom used to work here at the tournament. She was in charge of accreditation some years ago. No, it doesn't quite work like that. Roger Federer is one of the biggest stars in sports today. And whatever he gets from events he plays, he deserves it totally. And us, like everyone else, if we want to have Roger playing at the tournament, we have to negotiate with his management company, yes.
So how, with actually the specific example, I believe he is committed until at least next year. How was that 3-year contract negotiated, and what was your role in it?
Well, you are very well informed. Well, I mean, some 3 years ago, I started negotiating with Roger management company, and it took us some time to figure out how best it was to involve Roger in the tournament on the long term. And when you are 35 years old, long term is a difficult thing, and Roger didn't really know how much he wanted to play. He had some issue with his back at the time, but we find a solution that we could tie him up to the Swiss indoors for 3 years, and obviously if he wasn't fit or healthy enough to play, he could just pull out.
So, how was it done though? I'm digging deeper and deeper. I believe you got on a plane finally.
Well, I went down to Melbourne in Australia to finalize the negotiation with Tony Godzik, who is Roger's manager, and Roger basically doesn't talk about business. Roger is only interested in tennis, and he leaves it to other people to negotiate his commitments. Yes, it took some time. It took a lot of energy. We call it an organic contract, meaning that we cleaned up whatever was in the past, and we started anew, and we have got a fantastic relationship. I think this is his favorite tournament, maybe beside Wimbledon, and he's so happy to come here. And he said many times, I wish one thing is to take my bike from my parents' home and be able to ride down to the St. Jacobs Halle Stadium. Obviously, he cannot do it for all sorts of reasons, but that's his dream, to go back to his youth, take his bicycle and ride down to here.
Okay, so maybe an unfair question. After 2019, what happens? When do you start negotiating for what can happen in the future with Roger?
Well, I basically it's up to him. I don't know what he wants to do. I think he's listening to his body a lot, and I don't know what he will do after at the end of this year. I don't know what he will do next year. I mean, I cannot answer for Roger Federer on the state of his health. I believe the way I see him play today, I believe he will continue playing, and I also believe that as long as he plays, he will play Basel. And we will find, I'm sure, we will find an arrangement that satisfies both of us.
A bit more on Basel tournament. The logistics here, how does that work out? You have 32 players that come in, you have masses of public, then you have TV to generate. How does that all work together?
It's a very, very complex tournament, Basel, because we belong to the 500 category, and we are competing with cities like Tokyo, Beijing, Rio de Janeiro, London, Barcelona. And Basel is a fairly small city. I believe 250,000 people live in Basel. And we don't have the resources that Tokyo has got, and also the public. However, we've got a fantastic team of commercial people who are packaging the tournament in such a way that I think today we are the only tournament in the world that is sold out regularly on Monday night.
Wow. And with the sponsors, so you have a team that actually goes out and looks for sponsors. You don't have to give me figures, but I guess they pay a little bit more than they did 40 years ago?
Yes, they do. And also being in Basel, they pay a little more than they would pay in, let's say, other tournaments like Monte Carlo or Paris-Bercy or Queens or just any tournament. The premium sponsorship in Basel is very high. And it's very difficult now to find companies that are ready to get involved. And so we have to look at the market outside of Switzerland. Swiss companies are finding it very difficult to get involved with us.
Is that because of a financial constraints or other
Yes,
reasons?
Essentially, it is very expensive today to get involved in a tournament like Basel. I mean, we have a budget of $20 million. It's massive. It's as big as a master series like Paris Bercy or Madrid or Rome. And we are only a 500 tournament. So those tournaments, they get the players for free because they have to play, where we have to negotiate their revenue. And the revenue of television is not as consequent in the 500 as it is in the 1,000. And also, once again, I mean, you know, there is only 250,000 people living in Basel, and we cannot have two ticketing, one for the afternoon, one for the evening, which we would love. But at the same time, when you have a sold-out crowd, the stadium is a real buzz.
Well, we're clearly in the stadium now. For the future of tennis, now for the average person in the public, it may be a bit confusing. We have the International Tennis Federation, which is really getting behind the Davis Cup, and they're saying from 2019, wonderful tournament in Madrid, 18 countries, everyone's going to play, maybe, or maybe not. And then we have the ATP, Association of Tennis Professionals, who are saying, oh, in January 2020, we're going to have this great world tournament. Is that a mess, and how are they going to sort it out?
Well, it's not a mess as such. I mean, maybe the public perceives it that way. Basically, there are conflict of interest a little bit, and in the end, the players have the say because they decide to play or not to play. And at the moment, they're all saying that November and the Davis Cup is far too late in the season. And top players like Novak Djokovic, Zverev, Roger Federer have indicated that they wouldn't play in the Davis Cup. Now, the people who are organizing the Davis Cup are saying it doesn't matter if the top players don't come because it's a team event. And obviously, it's coming from somebody outside tennis. He's a football player, Piqué, from Barcelona. So he has bought the rights of the Davis Cup from the ITF, which is quite an interesting thing. Somebody coming from outside the sport of tennis and acquiring major assets of the tennis, and the ATP suddenly has to deal with an outsider to the game. However, the ATP has created the World Team Cup, not created, but as assigned, reinvented, let's say. It used to be in Düsseldorf in May before the French Open, and now it will be organized with the Australian Tennis Federation in the 2 weeks before Melbourne and the Australian Open. And I personally think that this is the best thing that the ATP could have done. We were all implicated in it. We had a vote to decide if we wanted the World Team Cup in Australia in January, and there was a majority of members that voted for it. And then the ATF said, okay, we will do the Davis Cup at the end of the year, and obviously the two cannot live together. I mean, so a solution has to be found. Either they decide at ITF, but I don't have anything to do with ITF, so it's their business, to move the tournament in September, maybe after the US Open, or to negotiate with the ATP, and maybe there is a super major tournament that comes up that combines World Team Cup and Davis Cup. Anything is possible. And the money they're talking about is just unbelievable.
So maybe in your 30-odd years experience in this business, you think you've seen it all, but you probably haven't yet, because it's going to be really dynamic of Gerard Piqué, who questions the viability of Roger's legs. And then we have the ATP saying, well, we have our loyalties as well. It's going to be a fascinating few months and years to look forward to, isn't it?
Oh, very much. But also it's very destabilizing for some people. But in the end, the players matter, and they decide. And if they don't want to play an event, basically there is no event. And at the ATP, which is a combination of players and tournament, we feel very confident that we will come out on top of the situation. And also because we are starting to think of the future with the new Gen tournament, and which is an experimental lab for us in Milan the week after Paris. We test new rules with young players. We try to figure out how the game will develop in the future. And so the ATP is really thinking beyond 220. What are we going to do with the game in the year 25 and so on?
Well, let's watch this space. Thank you so much. Really
Thank you.
appreciated meeting you
Nice
today.
meeting you
and
too,
let's hope
Matthew.
the future of tennis is good.
Thank you.